Hi, this is Jay Hummel. Welcome to the Deep Dive in partnership with Investopedia. So excited today to have Penny Phillips. We pride ourselves in being led by our viewers. And one of the questions I always get is, how do you grow a firm? And there's nobody better than Penny Phillips. Penny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jay. So good to be here. A long time no see and speak.
I know, people who listen and watch this know that we don't prepare very much. So, congratulations. You and I haven't caught up since you got married. So,
That's right.
congratulations.
Thank you
And
very much. Yeah,
so so just tell the viewers and watchers a little bit about what your background and what you're up to at Journey.
sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. I've, as you know, spent my whole career in the practice management arena in the wealth management space, which is sort of, maybe a unique little background. Prior to launching Journey a couple years ago, I ran a practice management coaching and consulting firm specifically for advisors in the independent space, worked extensively here in the US and in Canada, focused on helping advisors grow, scale, sell their businesses. And prior to that, had stints at a number of awesome firms, including Envestnet, of which you are also an alum. A couple years ago, launched Journey, and truthfully, Jay, we've talked about this. The impact that you have as a consultant working with advisors is awesome, but what I found is if I really wanted to impact advisors and the industry and really, really help them grow and scale, and equitize their businesses fairly, that I should probably just build the platform of their dreams, the platform that they'd been talking to me about, while I was coaching them. And so that's what I set out to do. Journey's an RIA platform. We offer back, middle, and some front office support. We are practice management focused, so we're physically and actually helping advisors implement best practices every day. And it's been 3.5 years, 10 teams, about 4 billion. It's awesome.
Man, you guys have been so successful. Thank you for being on the show. I
Of
think
course.
one of the things that I know you're really good at and Journey's really good at is thinking about helping an advisor segment clients. So I literally this morning I was on an email, somebody got referred to one of our firms and they were thinking about how do I handle it? How do I deal with it? Who's the relationship manager? Is it big enough? Is it small enough? Where do we put it? I think segmenting clients is one of the things that I've been really impressed with how you've thought about it. How do you help advisors think about that?
This is a topic I talk about a lot, and I have maybe a little bit of a unique perspective, having grown up in the practice management space and literally sitting in on hundreds of workshops about segmentation. I feel that we totally overthink client segmentation. We talk about, gold, platinum, silver, the 4 tiers, the 6 tiers of segmentation. And what I always say to advisors is the reality is you have your best clients and you have everyone else. And that's the cold honest truth. The difference between a C and D, right? That's the traditional way to segment the 4 sort of tiers. The difference
Yeah.
between the work that you were doing for a C level client and a D level client, or even a B, C, and D, is really, really, really there's not much difference. It's essentially the same. So what I tell advisors is simplify it. Identify your top relationships. I mean, usually the 80-20 rule holds true, right? So it's the, 20 to 40 relationships that as the lead advisor and rainmaker in the business you can handle. Those are your top relationships. Those are the people that you are having the most frequent review meetings with, 4 times a year. Those are the people that you are calling once a month. Those are the people that maybe you're doing tax planning for via Holistiplan. You're coordinating with their CPA. You're doing all the things, right? And then everybody else is sort of roughly on a systematic schedule. You're either meeting with folks twice a year or once a year, and folks that are maybe a little bit higher touch, you're reaching out to once every other month. I mean, we've talked about this so much in the industry, but what I find is advisors get paralyzed by all the details and all of the sort of things that they have to do after they're done with the segmentation exercise. And so my recommendation is make this really easy for yourself. Start with the top relationships, 20 to 40. list out what you're going to do for them, list out the frequency of reviews for the remaining clients in the book of business, and then immediately get that into a CRM where segmentation falls apart. And you've heard this over and over from advisors probably. We did the segmentation exercise. We filled the spreadsheet out. We did the Excel. And it's like, great. Then what'd you do with it? Well, nothing. I did the exercise. Like, right. Then it has to go into the CRM, in the Calendly, in the calendar. And you need to physically get started doing that sort of proactive, systematic work. That's the first thing. The other thing I'll say is there's no secret sauce to this. A single person cannot handle 100 relationships. Well, they can handle 100 relationships if all they're doing is financial planning and advising. Most
right.
founder advisors that we deal with cannot work with 100 clients. They can work reasonably well with 20 to 40 relationships. So what I tell advisors is there is no way to fully segment and scale a book unless you have other advisors on your team. That's it. Now, if you want to spend 100% of your time advising those 100 clients systematically, then you got to join a firm like ours or somewhere else where you can build sort of the scale around you. But make it easy for yourself in the CRM, and you need others on your team to handle everybody other than the 20 to 40 relationships.
Well, I would love your perspective on this. The email I got this morning was $1 million prospect, right? Good friend of mine looking for an advisor. Obviously, we invest in advisory firms, so ask me for an advice. I think there's still a lot to be done for smaller investors, right? Because everybody still puts the line in 1 million, 2 million.
I know.
think there's a lot to be done for an $1 million client who just doesn't need a lot, right? Who doesn't want to go to Schwab and do intelligent portfolios, doesn't want to go to Betterment, doesn't want to do that, who wants to deal with an advisor, who can deal with $1 million client. But I hear a lot, and this is why I was excited to have you on the show, is I hear a lot about advisors turning down $1 million clients. I don't get it.
I think what's happened in our industry is we've dictated success for the advisor. And by the way, we'll take $1 million client if any of your advisors don't want
Yeah.
the $1 million client.
Yeah.
But we've dictated success for advisors. So we continue to sort of move the goalpost. And then suddenly advisors feel like, okay, well, if I don't have the $1 billion practice, if I don't have the $10 million relationship, like I'm not a good advisor, I'm not a top advisor. And the reality is what the industry says is irrelevant. If you enjoy working with this sort of simple $1 million client that has simple planning needs, like go for it. My recommendation to advisors that are bringing in clients, perhaps that are even under $1 million, or it's friends of top clients or kids of top clients, is there has to be, so a couple things. We have to think differently about how they pay for our services. We talk a lot about subscription fees, enabling people to have access to you or somebody on your team, every last Friday of the month at a specific time slot where they can come on and ask their questions about their finances. You're managing their portfolio for them and doing all that stuff behind the scenes, but perhaps they have access to that and maybe they're paying, I don't know, a couple $100 a month. I'm making that up. But this idea of aligning our services with the needs of the consumer that's maybe younger, a little bit less sort of wealthy and complex, it aligns with the way they're paying for services elsewhere. So what I'd say to folks is, especially if you have others on your team, junior advisors perhaps or associate advisors, scale the service by dictating when and how they speak to you, and putting them on a different sort of pay structure than just the traditional, fee on
Yeah.
assets.
Well, and Penny, let's go deeper on that because I think you and I have debated this over the years, from our days in InvestNet. I'm really interested in your perspective on subscription fees. How do advisors think? Let's just say my example I just used: $1 million client, $500,000 client. How do you think? Because to be honest with you, as you and I have debated, I have a I have a hard time thinking through subscription-based advisory fees. I feel like they make sense for small clients. Do they make sense for big clients? How do advisors think through that? So I'd love your perspective on that.
It's a great question, and the this is one of those things that we talk about a lot theoretically, and very few people actually implement. And I do want to say that because we do talk about
Yeah.
hourly and subscription. The reality is the overwhelming majority of advisors charge on AUM. And I will
Yeah.
say, part of the reason why I think subscription fees are so hard to implement is because that is not how businesses are valued. That's not what the industry talks about or candidly cares about. And so,
And let's be honest. I always say when we think about our industry, it's explicit versus, implicit fees.
correct.
A client doesn't really understand when they're how much they're paying when it's an AUM fee.
That
They
I,
they under, they
yep,
understand what they're paying when it's on their, if it's a subscription fee, they're like, wait a minute, why would I pay $300 a month, $500 a month, $600 a month? So I think we have an implicit versus an explicit issue as it relates to our industry.
I don't disagree. And actually, I wouldn't, $1 million client, I don't think, is that subscription fee type client? Maybe not. I'm thinking, younger client. Again, it's a child of a current client. They don't have a lot in assets. Maybe it's, 250,000 or whatever it is. And by the way, that's a lot to some people. Like I always want to say that, we're sort of
Oh,
skewed
of
in our
course.
perception of
Oh
affluence in
yeah.
this
I mean,
business.
if you have $1 million, you have a lot of money. And
That's
so
exactly right. Exactly. But the younger folks, where there isn't a need for a comprehensive financial plan, they're going to take only a couple hours of your time. And that's really what you're thinking about, right? Am I covering sort of my theoretical hourly rate? They're only covering a couple hours of your time a month. Roughly that's what you're looking to cover in hopes that eventually over time, as they accumulate more assets. And I always tell advisors is if you're starting on a flat fee or a subscription fee for those who do, explain to clients up front as they accumulate and hit certain markers and goals in their accounts, you will eventually switch them to an advisory fee.
Well,
um,
I love that. You went exactly where I was hoping you were going to go because this is honestly where I've always struggled is if I'm somebody who has 1 million or 2 million and I'm paying a subscription fee and then I suddenly have 10, what's the argument? What's the argument that you now you're doing more for me because I have $10 million? Like
yeah,
why can't I? So I think the conversion is what I've always struggled with.
yeah. Well, I tell advisors, listen, it's your business. You are the one in control. I think advisors oftentimes there's a lot of sensitivity around fees. I think advisors sometimes are fearful of having the conversation. And they're fearful if they bring it up, clients will over question. And then the reality is if you're delivering value, price is not an issue. And we've always known that. I think the $1 to $2 million client, that's too large of a client to be the subscription type of client. I tell advisors, market this on your site and articulate it very clearly. Clients with this much in assets, this is how we service them. This is how they pay us. Once they hit this, and whatever it is, the 500,000, they move to an advisory fee, and we are a fans of the blended, tiered obviously fee schedule, so that um, you know folks sort of graduate down a bit, but doesn't impact advisor revenue as much as a linear fee schedule.
Yeah, but again, this is where I've always struggled. If you came to me and I'm a $2 million client, right? And I'm charging you a subscription fee. Let's just say it's a $500,000 client, right? To make it easier. And all of a sudden I wake up as a $5 million client and I say to you, well, I used to pay for your subscription and I used to pay basically a per hour fee. Why, why is your work more at 5 million than 500,000? That's what I think advisors ask me all the time.
Listen, it's a great question. I think the advisors that navigate that are the best, probably the best salespeople. I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
look, the reality is there's complexity that comes with, additional wealth. There's additional oversight. I mean, there's a million things, and
Yeah.
sort of want to be careful here, but there's a million things you can say to sort of paint the picture of, there's more stuff going on when you have more.
Yeah, there's
Again,
more. You got multiple homes. You got
I
multiple homes. You have
exactly.
employees. You have all those things.
Exactly. You have
So that's
additional
always my
goals that
argument.
additional goals you're looking to accomplish. I also, again, I think that the $500,000 client, even at that level, I don't see advisors charging subscriptions at those rates. I think it's the clients that are high earners, not yet rich. Maybe they don't have a whole lot at all, but got a lot of loans. They're, have some planning needs, but no assets. And so it's easier to make that jump you're talking about when they have no assets and you're charging them a subscription fee. And now they have assets and you say, well, this is how we charge you now.
That's right. No, no, I think you nailed it. I think, Penny, I always ask this question as my last question on the show every week is what's the one thing you think, I mean, you're lucky you have as every guest that we have on the show, as a macro view of the world. What's the one thing you think that our industry isn't paying enough attention to, or or not or not talking enough about?
That's a really good question. And we didn't prepare for this, so you're
No,
asking
of
me on
course,
this, but I'm going to
of
give you
course.
my gut
Yeah,
reaction to it. I don't think it's something that we're not, um, I think we're not talking about it enough, although we are starting to talk about it more. We talk a lot about succession planning in our business. Obviously, we've been talking about the generational wealth transfer. And by the way, when is this wealth transfer happening? I feel like we've
I
been
always
talking about it
laugh.
for 20 years. I mean,
I always laugh when everyone brings up Succession. Somebody should write a book on that.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about this for so long, and we've been talking about sort of prepping advisors to prep G2. And that's we've really focused, like, you got to develop the advisor in house and you got to transfer the trust and you got to and what I think we've sort of failed to really focus in on, and I would guess agree with me, is that the second generation of advisor, I think we underestimated how many actually want to take over the businesses, actually want to be that sort of hunter, hard charging rainmaker, like I'll just figure it out, and really want the risk and responsibility associated with that. I think we've underestimated the psychographic differences in the generations, assuming that these folks would just, like the baby boomers, just sort of develop into these strategic leader, CEO, rainmakers who can do it all. And by the way, the fact that the industry is consolidating and we're seeing more of the employee advisor, I think these things go hand in hand. I think we underestimated that. And there's a lot of folks that I talk to where they have G2 on their team, they've trained them, and all of a sudden they realize actually this person doesn't have the actual X factor to take over the business.
Well, no, I think you nailed it. And you and I met 10 years ago when we were in
Yeah,
Investnet and worked on this. The viewers are going to get tired of hearing me saying this, but I think we've misunderestimated two things. One, that internal succession for the most part is dead.
that's right.
If the founder wants to maximize value because the firms are worth too much.
That's
Now,
exactly right.
the PE firms may be gone in 3 years, and we'll go back to what we were in 2016, and we'll have multiples that that are different than what we have today. The second thing is the the successors are being forced into models where they're employees when they get sold into something,
That's
right?
right.
And there's not enough money in it for them. So I just think, I personally think the breakaway movement isn't going to be out of the wires, isn't going to be out of the independent broker dealers. In the next 10 years, you and I are young in the grand scheme of the industry. The breakaways are going to they're going to come from all these firms that sold into these mega RIAs,
That's
and the
exactly right.
successors are going to break away
By the way,
because they're like,
no one is saying that out loud. No one has
yeah.
said what you just said. Um, you are dead on.
Yeah, no, I get in a lot of trouble. I have said it out loud and on LinkedIn a few times, and
That's
I
amazing.
get
Oh, I love
there's
you and John are
there's
the
some
best with this
there's
stuff. You're
there's
the
some
best.
there's some people who don't like my stuff. But well, Penny, thank you so much for coming on the show. How do people get a hold of you if they want to contact you and get your brilliance?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Penny Phillips, you can find me all over LinkedIn and social media, or you can find me at journeyswadvisors.com. And I usually answer all those emails
Usually,
all
usually.
the time.
And
All the time.
you're pretty good on
I'm
LinkedIn.
usually the one. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
pretty good on LinkedIn. You'll find her on
Exactly.
LinkedIn. Guys,
Exactly.
everybody, thanks for watching. Penny's a great guest. We'll look
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing you next time on the deep dive.